Hey everyone, Luca here with Team Luca First and Remix Service First Realty. And we are doing the second of our mayoral candidate debates, or debates, not debates. We're just talking about having a debate, interviews. And I'm here fortunate to have with us Skyler McArthur-O'Blenes. So welcome, Skyler.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. And I appreciate you taking the time because I know we were just having a little discussion. You not only have a full-time job, but now you've got a second full-time job, at least while the election's going on. So
yeah.
I was on your website. I got to know a little bit about you. I got to know a little bit more about you while we were setting up. At what point in time, where were you sitting? What happened what triggered you to say, hey, I'm going to run for mayor?
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question. It's one I've got a lot. People wonder, what inspires a 25-year-old to come out of a summer and say, you know what, I'm gonna add on a second full-time job. I'm gonna run for mayor. It is a question I've received a lot. Well, I don't know if it was a single moment, more like a series of moments. So as I mentioned to you previous to the conversation here, I'm from Kingston. I've lived here my whole life. So it's been the story of 1,000 straws breaking the camel's back sort of thing. But what led up to it is, it was always something that I sort of had on my mind would be some sort of political leadership role. And I was always drawn to the mayoral side of things because I like how you don't have to box yourself into a specific political party. Mm-hmm. I like how you can run independently and how you can vote and have opinions that don't necessarily conform to one party. So that was one thing that attracted me to the role itself. But as to what drew me to running on this specific election is it was a series of things, like I said, but particularly it was the sense of voter apathy. In talking about the election, I'd heard about it happening earlier in the summer, and I had just talked about some friends and family, people who have lived in Kingston, who currently live in Kingston, and the general consensus was, oh yeah, who cares? And that really just rubbed me the wrong way. I just didn't like that sense of who cares? Well, we should all care. People care when bad news comes down the pipeline. Mm-hmm. Oh, people should do this. They should do this. Okay, well, let's get engaged and actually do something about it. You don't need to be a political extremist to get involved. I think there's a ton of room for people that have all sorts of views to get involved and actually contribute to their community. So I thought, why don't I walk the talk? It's one thing to say to people, okay, yeah, you have a full-time job. You can still get engaged. You can still get involved. But why don't I actually do it myself? Why don't I show that young people can be involved without having to be downtown picketing all the time? Like not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's other ways to get involved. So I thought, if I run, worst case scenario, I've at least shown that it can be done. Whether I win or lose, if people see that, oh wow, like that person looks like me, they're my age group, they represent some of the values that I have, although he didn't win, or maybe he did win. At the end of the day, I feel like that inspires sort of change that I'm looking to drive in the Kingston community because, like I said, there was just a sense of apathy.
Well, and I don't disagree with you. I mean, we see that at the provincial level, we see it at the federal level, no question about it. And I think, there's a lot of reasons for that. One, it speaks to, I think, the fact that people are just, at the end of the day, unless something really drastic happens that makes them want to stand up and take notice. Otherwise, everybody sort of just puts their head down and keeps doing what they do every day. But I guess if anything, depending on the success you have or you don't have, and if we're measuring success, obviously you would like to win the election. But hopefully the positive byproduct is you will have awakened maybe your demographic, right? Yeah. Because that is part of the demographic that's missing, right? The fact that politics has always been thought of as an older demographics game, or at least those that have paid attention to it. Our parents, my parents even, and I have children that are. Well, my son's your age, actually.
There you go.
And I don't, even though he grew up in a political family, grandparents as well, who were actually members of parliament and members of provincial parliament. Okay. They're probably still not that active, but so I applaud you for that. Now, I guess the one thought that came to my head, though, aside from the apathy, when we talked about, I'm having the other candidates, we've had Tina on, and I'm interviewing Mayor Patterson next week. Is he doing that bad a job? I guess, like what is missing, I suppose, right? Because again, it speaks to that. what's glaring? What's sticking out for you, I guess, in terms of what you think is an immediate need or needs some attention?
Yeah. So it's not to say that he's doing a bad job. I'm not looking to throw anyone under the bus in that way. It's more just, to me, what I see the driving factor is once again just that apathy piece. It's not that he is doing anything particularly wrong. It's that people have just seen it as autopilot. It's just, oh, he'll handle it, or oh, the council, it's the same people, it's been that way, let's just let them deal with it, that's their problem. And sometimes all it takes is a change of face, a change of what, because at the end of the day, the mayor is the figurehead of local government. They're not the be all end all of local government, but they are the figurehead. And sometimes it just takes a change, something small like that, to actually have reverberations that go beyond just a mayor changing and maybe a slight change of policy direction or whatever. Sometimes something like that can invigorate a population. Now, obviously there are critical things, like there's the homelessness issue, there's the overall affordability issue, there's the issues around environmental just degradation in general. And these aren't issues that are unique to Kingston, like we discussed previous to this. And I'm not saying that they're a direct result of any thing that has any single thing that has been done by local government. It's a series of things. It's at all levels of government. This is something that has been in the works for years. And as a realtor, I'm sure you're very well aware of the trends that happen. Like Aurea comes out with their pulse reports all the time, and you can see market trends happening. You've been here through buyers markets, sellers markets, balanced markets. You've seen it all. This is unprecedented in that there's been a latent sort of demand that's been there for years, and housing investment has been always very lucrative, like especially in the past 5 or 10 years with cheap money floating around. It just made sense to park it in real estate, something that is a real piece of property.
Well, it's tangible. It's tangible. It's stable, right?
Exactly. And it's something your parents wouldn't be mad at you for investing in. No. At the end of the day, you get that approval. So it might not have the quite excitement of cryptocurrency or whatever, but it's something that has been attractive. So there hasn't been that sort of urgency towards developing until now that it's too late. It's similar to what you're seeing happening with the Bank of Canada. Oh, by the way, there might be a recession coming. Let's start hiking up the interest rates. But once again, that's another thing that's happened sort of too late. Yeah. So I think one of the signals that I want to take here is going from being responsive to more proactive. And I really think that that's something that it's just something that I think having a younger demographic represented at that level of government, in government that people typically think of as kind of stuffy and stale, I think that would really, really help with invigorating people. And it's not to say that I have all the answers, because I don't have all the answers, and no single person does. And anyone who claims they do is lying to you.
I agree.
So what my sort of strengths and what I want to bring to this is I want to take a listening approach. I want to take an approach of someone who is upfront with people, because that's what we need. We need someone who's going to be telling it like it is. Like, I don't want to just hear we need houses. How many houses do we need? What do we actually predict growth to be so that we can actually meet demand? And of course, it's not as simple as just building more houses. Although supply of that would be great, that's one part of it. And especially institutional building, that's one part of it. Having proper processes in place so that the development process can be as smooth as possible, but keeping in mind the environmental element, because we can't just build and throw everything else to the wayside, because at the end of the day, environmental future is extremely important. So a bit of a tangent there, but essentially,
no. I appreciate your passion. And you're, you're a smart guy. You went to graduate from Queen's in economics,
applied economics,
and business. So you at least theoretically have a basic knowledge of some of the things you just commented on, which and I'm not saying that facetiously by any means.
No, okay.
But I often, and I guess I get frustrated, and I'm not singling you out per se, because I've had Tina Fraser on here, and then even, as I said, the others when they get a chance. But everyone's always good at sound bites, right? And everybody wants to be sustainable, and everybody wants to do things. And we're going to let's not be naive about this. It costs money.
Yeah.
So, right. So where's the money coming from? Because the other side of it is, as you know, nobody wants higher taxes, or at least nobody wants to pay for anybody else. So
that's the goal, right?
If you get elected, and I understand you operate, you're not, Kingston's not going to get the mayoral veto, last I heard. So you got to work with your council, but you get elected today. Tomorrow, what's your first, in terms of if you had the opportunity to say, I want to do one thing right now, I have the chance to do one thing and change it right now, what's the problem you tackle first?
Yeah. So I think the first thing, by the way, great question. I think the first thing that needs to be done is looking beyond any individual issue and looking at the problem-solving mechanism. So it's one thing. There's so many issues that are extremely important. Like affordability, huge. The sustainability, huge. All that stuff is extremely important. But if I had to say the one thing, it's the sort of mix of the government engagement from the population, and then as well just overall government operations. So it's a two-sided head of overall how problems are solved in the community. Because I think that once you not solve, there's never a solution, but once you sort of make improvements to how problems are solved, all problem solving will be made better. Mm-hmm. So that would be my first step. So what that looks like in practical terms could take a bunch of different avenues, because depending on what council looks like, I don't know exactly who's going to be sitting in those chairs. So appealing to them and reaching those sort of agreements is not, I can't tell you what that would look like now, but that's something that I sort of think is one of my strengths, is reaching those collaborative ties, because a lot of the work that I've done in the past has been collaborative. It's not just me spearheading some initiative, getting it done through pulling up my bootstraps and doing it. Things in the modern times are made to be done collaboratively. We have all these tools to collaboratively work on things. So let's bring that into government. I've seen single-handedly in my work, it's anecdotal, but I've seen it across the Ontario Public Service, this push for increased efficiency through collaboration. And it's these communities of practice. It's these working groups that are multidisciplinary to solve problems in ways that aren't linear. It's solving things through getting outside opinions, through tried and true methods. And it's bringing those things together. And I really think that through that, if you can make the problem-solving mechanism, which is the local government, more efficient and operate better, that also speaks to that point you're making about where's the money coming from. Because if you can cut operational waste and you can use the same resources more effectively, then you can make those changes at hopefully a lesser cost to the broad public. Because the goal is not to come out with all these new programs to help people, but at the cost of raising property taxes an extreme amount. Because who does that end up falling onto? The people you're trying to help. So it is that double-edged sword, and you have to be really careful. There's a line you have to toe. But I would say generally that would be the first thing. I hope that sort of answers.
No, actually it does, and it's quite enlightening. You actually, on your website, you alluded to winning the very first mayor's challenge, and that you would problem solve some, but you didn't go on to say what that was. So what
keep people interested.
Because I think that would give some context to what you just spoke about.
For sure. So what I was kind of speaking about just now was a lot about the operational efficiency creation that I do in my current job. But for sure, with community engagement especially, that's one of the things that I was seeking in that Mayor's Innovation Challenge. So for those listeners who don't know, back in 2018, there was an initiative from the City of Kingston trying to invigorate the community, which is great. It sought answers to some of the city's most difficult problems. One of them being community engagement, specifically. Well, actually, I can't remember if it was specific to the Queen's locals community or if that's just the angle that we took. I can't quite remember. So basically what happened there is the call was put out to the community. We're looking for answers, whatever. My friend and I just happened to see it in passing one day. And we saw, oh, they're looking for a call to action on this. And I'm an ideas person. I think of a lot of ideas for things. And one of the things that jumped out to me right away was about bridging that gap between Queens and the community and using using a platform that would be something digital, something where you could have an online community that broke between the barriers of this is the Queen's student area, this is the locals area. It was intended to be something that would bridge that. So my friend and I did a lot of deliberations over a plate of pad thai. We were just sort of very entrepreneurially looking at the problem. We thought, you know what, like we're both from Kingston, we could take a stab at this. So we did, and essentially what our proposal was, it might be on the archive somewhere where you could find it, but essentially we proposed a solution that was this application that we had all sort of wireframed out as to how you could have these events, and it could be a way that people could see what's going on in the community, because that was one of the things that we noticed, was that people don't always know what's going on, and things have changed a lot since 2018. There's now more services that offer that, but at the time that was one of the things we really noticed was lacking. So we developed this wireframe for that, presented it to City Council. There was business leaders, the mayor was there, the community was there. We took questions, and we were eventually selected as co-winners. So my friend and I, we were two fairly non-technical people because we didn't have the coding ability and all of that, but there was another group who actually did have that. So we actually worked collaboratively with them. They sent us to a startup incubator. And that was actually another example of a time where I had two jobs, because I just got hired for an internship, because I wasn't banking on winning that, right? So I had just got hired for an internship. So we ended up having to pivot a bit, because not long after we got funding to do this, and put into that incubator, we found out that Google was actually releasing their own version of that.
Wow.
So we thought, okay, so go against Google or change something else. So we switched to a different idea, which was also in the same vein of community engagement, but it was more about educating people. So it was not to digress too far from your original question, but it was a rapid prototyping and drag and drop coding thing. So people who didn't have technical skills could build living applications. It was pretty sweet, but being three young co-founders at the end of the day, it ended up sort of fizzling out, but we got a lot of interest from the community, and now there are platforms like that exist, like Scratch.
Right.
So yeah, that was sort of what that whole thing was about.
Oh, excellent. So what, I mean, we talked earlier, and I misspoke when I did the introduction, but we haven't heard of a mayoral debate or anything. So obviously, maybe if somebody listens again to this one, the word will get out, because I think people would be interested in that. And I would think it'd be a way, at least a platform with everybody there to not yell at each other, but at least, view their, or at least air their viewpoints or their platform opinions. What's been the reception so far? How have you seen, like, what's trending? Are you getting some followings, or what's happening?
Yeah. So I've received a lot of feedback from people who are more politically aware, people who are less politically aware, the whole spectrum. People genuinely seem to like what I'm offering. The biggest issue that I've faced so far is just getting my name out there. To be honest, it's difficult, and like you mentioned, I am working a full-time job, and this is my first campaign ever, so there's a lot of things that I don't know, and there's a lot of elements to running a campaign at a professional level that when I came into this, maybe I wasn't fully aware of. I've been learning every day, and trying to get my name out there. I've been attending events locally, educating myself, because I think that's a huge part of it. For when things like this happen, I want to make sure that I'm educated. I want to make sure that I can speak to the points that people care about. And that education is ever evolving as well. Like, as I talk to people, like I said at the beginning of this, I'm not the end all be all. I don't know everything. And that's sort of a culture piece that I want to instill, is that nobody's sort of perfect, but through an amalgamation of everyone's skills, we can come to good solutions. So yeah, that's been my biggest difficulty is I'm also not naturally like a social media person. I'm not too much about, oh, hey guys, here I am at this event, like, look at me. But I know that is part of it. And I've been trying to break out of my shell a bit to get to get more like that, because I understand you can have the best ideas in the world, but if nobody's heard about you, well, you're not going to get the votes, because that's really at the end of the day what it comes down to.
Fair enough. And I mean, although I haven't seen any signage or anything like that, so
that isn't able to be put out yet.
Okay.
And there's also been a change where you can't actually put it on public property, so the signage is going to look a bit different this year.
Okay.
I'm kind of partially happy about that because it's really expensive.
Yeah. No, I know. Trust me. I know.
Yeah,
expensive marketing and signage is for sure. And I'm just to echo your point. I'm not a social. I mean, for me, it's the new. I mean, back in the day, it was the print. The full page ads in the Wig Standard or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
For those that remember. So social media has just replaced that. Right. It's the necessary evil in a world of marketing where you're just trying to find room in a massive space, right? Or at least have someone pay attention to it. So, the homelessness problem, because, and I heard, Paige Agnew on, I'm an Ontario morning junkie. I listen to CBC all the time. And they had her on after that development was kiboshed at the tannery site.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone has their own opinion about the developer for that project, myself included, but we're not here to debate that. But it's certainly on the surface of it, it seemed like it was something that was worthwhile given the number of beds or the number of potential units that we're going to house. That came out of left field, I guess, right? I mean, I'm not certainly putting you on a hot spot or to make you, say one thing or another, but what was your take on that? Or
so just to clarify, you mean like on the fact that it was shut down?
Yeah.
I wish I could speak more intelligently to it, because in all honesty, I didn't follow it extremely closely. But at a surface level, yeah, it would be nice to sort of clean up that land and make use of it for like a mixed use property. I can totally see the value of that. Once again, I don't have all the information on it. So I hesitate to say that, like, if I was on council, I'd for sure have voted for it or for sure would have rejected it. But at a surface level, yeah, it did seem to have a lot of pros.
And I started the question with homelessness, and I mean, it's a bugaboo for me. I mean, it's something after 35 years of being in real estate, I never understood the disconnect, right? I mean, what happens, what has to happen to someone to be in that world, right? Or to become that way, or in those situations. And it's hard for us to grasp, right? Because we're not there, and you struggle with what has to happen or what does happen. And I guess I'm going on my soapbox now for a little bit, because you're giving me the confidence there, the voice to do it.
Go for it. This is your show.
Because, you're a smart guy, and I appreciate having conversations with intelligent people. But I mean, because a lot of people, and they've even the council where they talk about moving some of these places to certain public spaces and everything like that for, some of these tiny houses or the small tents or whatever they're trying to accommodate. And, I've had people come up to me and say, who's the counselor for that area? I mean, I live in that area, and so it's a lot of NIMBYism that goes on, even though everybody's empathetic or sympathetic to the plight. I mean, there you go. I mean, you can have all the best intentions in the world, but you started off the conversation about apathy. I'm not saying it's not apathetic so much as it's not certainly empathetic. That's for sure. Right. So, I mean, how do you tackle that?
Yeah, that is a very big one. And once again, no one solution for it. There's a variety of things. And one of the things that you spoke to that I just want to quickly address is, you can't put yourself in that situation. But one of the things that I think would surprise a lot of people is how close a lot of people are to being in that situation.
Absolutely.
A lot of people that are operating on a day-to-day basis that are working poor. And as I'm sure you've talked on the show numerous times about, like, the cost of living has way outpaced wage growth.
Absolutely.
So for a lot of people working in jobs, and you're seeing it, people aren't working anymore in a lot of fast food restaurants unless the salary is there that they can somewhat afford to live. Because in economics you talk about opportunity cost, and that's basically, what else could I be doing with my time? What's the next best thing I could be doing? So if you're working somewhere for $14 an hour, $15 an hour, and you're seeing that your mobility in terms of I can't move out of my house or my parents' house or my bachelor apartment because now I've been priced out of the market. People don't see that how close some people are to being in those situations.
100%.
And I think a big part of it is it's a whole smorgasbord of different issues that leads someone to being there. There could be the financial element, there could be the mental health, there could be the trauma, there could be so many things. So each person has sort of a bespoke story as to why they're there. And it's hard to paint it with a single brush. But yeah, I think one thing that helps a lot with the empathy piece is realizing how close so many normal people are to being in that situation.
Yeah, and I spoke to Tina Fraser about this. I mean, I'm a proponent of a living wage, 100%. You know, and you're you know, the last week's guest was a mortgage broker, local mortgage broker who did financial planning in his previous career and then morphed into mortgage brokerage. And, you know, had some very sage words in terms of, you know, and we talked about the, you know, because when I started in real estate, the graph always was you get your mortgages fixed, your payment stays like this, but your income goes like this, right? Yeah. So there's always going to be that separation. Well, not anymore. Now it's like the mortgage is going like this, your wage is staying stagnant. So now you're right now, and there's a lot of working poor. My rub is though, because you hear the sound bites and I get frustrated because I'm entrepreneurial. You seem entrepreneurial, or at least have an entrepreneurial spirit. You can't force this on business owners either. I mean, they just came out of, they just got shell shocked over the, I mean, some businesses obviously thrived and did exceptionally well, but majority of them didn't, you know? And so, yes, I think every business owner would love to have great staff and retain great staff. I mean, that's the challenge right now is the labor force or the lack thereof, or it's a very shallow pond. You know, and I don't know what your demographic is doing out there, to be candid with you. If they're not working, I really don't. I'm going to sound like the old guy that walked uphill both ways to school in the winter, snowstorm and all that sort of, but I don't know. I mean, I'd like to know where these other opportunities are, because I don't see them doing anything else either, you know, but anyway, and I'm going off tangent too, and I don't want to
TikTok star
muddle the waters here, but so I mean, you're right. And you're right. That's a good, excellent point in terms of the empathy piece. There are a lot of families, I dare say, in Kingston that are living paycheck to paycheck, are living using the food bank more so. You know, I had Dan Aaron on here, you know, the food bank use is skyrocketed, you know? So we have all those real things happening in our community. So, listen, I've kept you long enough. Now you've got to go start your second job there and go handshake and all that kind of stuff. I'll leave the last word to you. Tell the world, or tell the constituents, or tell the community, what would you, apart from voting for you, what's a plug you want to give?
Sure. Wow. Wide open floor. I don't know. I guess sort of, if you can take anything from this, just realize that you do have the power to enact change. It's not just an old man's game. It's not just an old woman's game. It's a game that everyone needs to be involved in, because we share a collective future. Although, some people might be more sheltered from it based on financial situation. It's not just one person's future. So we all need to work towards what we want to see. And just generally be nice to people. Like people are trying. I mean, I genuinely believe that almost every single politician, they're putting themselves out there. I genuinely, maybe it's naive, but I think that they are in their own way trying to make things better. Some people maybe are not going in the right direction, but that's a subjective point. But I do think that don't just sit back and criticize. If you want things to be different, work to make them different. That's generally what I would say. And together, I think every problem is solvable. It's just going to take time, and we're going into a hard time, and that's realistic. There's a good chance of at least a downturn, but likely a recession of some sorts. So we're going to need to really come together, because if we try to weather the storm individually, it's going to be much, much harder. I'll say that much.
Well, we'll end it on those salient notes. So I really appreciate your time, Skyler, and all the best. I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay.